Welcome to Good Money Moves, the show where we share financial tips and advice to help you feel financially empowered. My name is Jenna, the AVP of Marketing here at First Alliance Credit Union, and joining me today is Sirena, one of our lending underwriters here at the credit union. And welcome back.
Thank you.
Happy to have you here again.
I'm so happy to be back.
Yeah. Before we dig into our topic today, which is all about how to make the most of your paycheck, whether it's your first paycheck, maybe you've never had a job before and you're just starting to kind of figure out how do you actually manage a paycheck, or maybe you've started a new job and you want to kind of start a fresh leaf with this new paycheck that you're getting. This is all about how to really put that money to work and the best way to set you up for long-term financial success. But before we dig deep into that, tell us a little bit about yourself, Sirena.
My name is Sirena Thompson. I've been with the company for just a little over 3 years, and I do central underwriting. It is mostly a checks and balances for our loans. Yeah. So I get to work with a lot of our staff and touch usually about half of our loans.
Yeah, and you see a lot of pay stubs, I'm sure.
A lot of pay stubs.
So you are a perfect person to have this conversation with us today.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, let's dig in. Let's just start with kind of the basics. How does someone actually read their pay stub? There's a lot of numbers that are on there, and what you think you make isn't actually what ends up in your bank account at the end of the day. So let's just talk a little bit. How can someone kind of understand some of the terms that you would see on a pay stub?
Yeah. I think pay stubs, I think people imagine they're supposed to know. And what's important to remember is that asking for help is totally okay. If it's your first paycheck, even just with a new company, there's going to be a lot of different terminology, some new things on there that maybe you've never seen before. But some things that are going to be pretty consistent is that your gross income is going to be the income you receive before any deductions, before your taxes are taken out. And that's really not what you're receiving, right? Your net income is going to be what you're actually getting into your bank account, right? And you are going to still have some deductions. Maybe you're putting some funds into your 401k, right? And seeing how much is going in. You can also see usually how much is being matched if your company does that. What's going into your taxes. You're probably, if you're in Minnesota, you're paying state and federal, and into some other like unemployment benefits and things like that as well. So there is a lot coming out that I think we don't imagine when we see that we're getting paid $15 an hour. Yeah. Right? So looking at that net, what's being deposited, even seeing your first direct deposit is a great way to start looking at what your actual budget should be.
Yeah. So just to kind of recap some of what you said. So gross is the amount that you make before anything comes out of that. So that's the amount that you're thinking of in your head when you're like, oh, I'm getting paid, $15, $20 an hour times whatever hours you work. That's the number, that big number. And then as you start to take out some of these things, health insurance coverage that is maybe coming out of your pay stub, or taxes, like you said, or, retirement benefits that you're contributing to, those start to take away from that gross. And what you end up with that actually gets deposited in is your net. Did I follow that?
Yes.
Awesome.
Your net is at the bottom of that list, right? After everything else is coming out.
Yeah. And sometimes it can be a pretty big difference, especially if you have a lot of, things that are coming out for, different things, whether you have a large premium for healthcare that you're having to cover, it can be a sizable difference between those things. Yeah. So knowing that, so you end up with your net pay, and that's the amount that you really have to work with for your budget.
Yes.
At the end of the day. So one term that we use a lot here, and you may hear if you're listening to other, financial type podcasts or reading financial type budgeting tips, is pay yourself first.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about that. What does that actually mean in context to, okay, your paycheck just hit your bank account, you've got your net pay in there now. Yeah. Pay yourself first. Talk about it.
Yeah. Pay yourself first is probably the opposite of what most people are doing, right? When you think of how you're budgeting your money, you're usually paying your bills. You might have some wants that you're going to make those purchases right after you get paid. And then usually at the end of that week or 2-week period, you're thinking, what's left over? Let's throw that in the savings account. Realistically though, the money that goes into your savings account, that's what you're paying yourself, right? The money that you spend on rent, that's somebody else's money. You're paying somebody else. The money that you're spending at Walmart or Costco for your groceries, that's all benefiting someone else. So when we think of pay yourself first, that's the money you're putting into your own investments, your own savings account, and having for yourself for the future and for a more comfortable life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the concept of paying yourself first, and that really the money that you're saving, you are truly paying yourself. I think that can be a really motivating and empowering way to think about saving money, is that I'm actually paying myself for the hard work I've done to earn all this money. I'm paying myself and keeping that little slice for myself. I think that can be really motivating for some people. So let's talk a little bit then about what is that right amount that someone should be paying themselves first, right? Because you don't want to shortchange yourself and end up not having enough to, pay for gas and groceries and those everyday expenses, and, make sure you have enough to pay all those bills. So how can someone maybe set a starting number when they're first getting a paycheck? Where should they start with setting a savings, pay yourself first part of their budget?
Right. There is the 50, 30, 20 rule. I don't know if you've heard of that, but 50% is your needs, the things that have to be paid. 30% would be your wants, some of those extra things. And then 20% would be for savings and your investment. I know that those numbers can seem high for people sometimes. But when you look at different rules, you can adjust those for yourself. I like to tell people to start off with 10%. 10% of your net income going automatically into investments. Remembering that some of those investments aren't just your savings account though. That could be your 401k. That counts as a portion of your savings, right? And as you get raises or get more comfortable in adjusting your budget, maybe you realize your apartment was too expensive and you can pull back in that portion of your budget. Now automatically put that into your savings and try and get up to that 20% if you can.
And what I really like about that methodology for budgeting is that it moves with your paycheck, right? Because you're using those percentages instead of saying, well, you shouldn't spend more than X dollars. It's no, look at this a little bit more holistically, kind of bigger buckets. It's less like kind of nitty gritty into the details and more like a holistic look at, the reality is that you do have wants and you should be able to have things in life that make you happy, even if you don't make thousands and thousands of dollars every month, like you should still have that little piece carved out for yourself. But I also like that it does prioritize a significant, I would call 20% a significant amount to put into savings. And I think that is a huge mindset shift when you're not used to thinking about paying yourself first, and having that kind of carved out, I think can be really motivating and give you a really clear path forward. So what would you, I think a lot of people that maybe are just getting started with paychecks and learning to manage their money, or maybe again, they're just trying to like reset their budget mindset. What are some common mistakes people make when it comes to first starting out managing a paycheck? Like, a lot of young people like, oh my gosh, I have all this money all of a sudden. It feels so good. Even if that paycheck in the grand scheme of things is like only a couple $100s, it feels so good to have that first paycheck. What are some common mistakes young people make when they see that for the first time?
I think, like you said, it's so exciting, and you're seeing some money come in, and you have that list of wants. And I think a lot of people see their time and think, that had to have been worth it. And this is how I'm going to make it feel that way by buying those things I wanted. But I think that is a huge downfall in starting off with a new employer, with a new budget, because it makes it harder to pull back. When you start buying Starbucks every day, I've done it. and then you have to cut back and you're like, gosh, I really messed up this month, and now it's going to feel like a struggle.
Yeah.
So I think pay yourself first. These automatic payments are going to be the easiest way to just set it up so it doesn't even feel like you've had to make a change. If you're making a transition to a new employer, you're probably feeling a little bit strained with cash anyways. So let's just keep it where you're at, where you can pay your bills, and put everything else where it has to go first.
Yeah. So you touched on something that I think is really important, and that's like automating that savings. What are some different ways that people, whether they're members of First Alliance Credit Union or not, could start automating their savings? What are some of the mechanisms that are available to people to do that?
My favorite, and it's not even a First Alliance product, right? It's direct deposit. I have my direct deposit split with my allowance. I know we talked about that on the last one we did, but having just a small portion that goes into one account, which is my checking, and the rest goes into savings accounts. Now from there, I do actually have it split again, and those would be split again with First Alliance products by doing automatic transfers. So I actually came in with one of our coworkers here, and she helped me set up those automatic transfers into my housing expenses, my grocery expenses, and into our savings, so that it automatically happens without the work. I think setting up those automatic payments, it's so important because we all have such a big load to take care of. And having one less thing on your task list, it might seem daunting to get all these things set up, but the moment it's set up, it's 5 less things to do in a week.
100%. So you kind of talked about a couple different things. You talked about direct deposit, which, to your point, you can do that with any employer, any financial institution just about has direct deposit capabilities through something called ACH, or automated clearinghouse. So it's a whole, we could do a whole different episode about that, but just know that that's a mechanism available throughout the financial system. And so you're talking about that when you do a direct deposit, you don't necessarily have to send all of that money to one place. You can ask your employer to send it. And maybe if you have even different financial institutions, you could split it between different financial institutions. So if you have a financial institution that you use for more of your savings and one that you use for more of your day-to-day, you could split it. And it doesn't have to be 50-50. It could be split in several different ways, whatever makes sense for your budget. But then you also talked about kind of setting up those automated transfers within like our online and mobile banking system, which is a common feature in online and mobile banking systems, is to be able to transfer funds between accounts and kind of set those up. And to your point, I do the same thing. I automatically pay all of my loan payments. Because I'm like, you know what? I don't want to think about this. It's got to be done regardless. I know it's got to come out of the budget, so just make it happen. I don't have to think about it. And to your point, one less thing to worry about, especially like if you're, to your point, if you're just starting a new job, just get it out of the way. One less thing to worry about when you're trying to make a big transition like that. So, and one thing that First Alliance recently introduced that I really like is Roundup Savings. So we talk about automating that savings, paying yourself first. That's a really great way to do that too. You just swipe your card, the difference between what you spent and that whole dollar gets put in your savings account. Like, I think I'm saving on average another like $30 a month just doing that. So, you know, lots of tools to automate budgeting, automate savings. Anything else I missed that you can think of?
Well, I do want to talk about that Roundup product. That was something that my mom started using when it was first offered years ago. And she was always, I mean, we were tight. We had a really strict budget, and she saved so much. $30, it feels like not a lot, but when you can go and treat yourself to that little thing because you saved that money automatically, it's so nice. Or feeling like you're one step closer to that big goal, right?
100%. Well, and I think too, you know, something we haven't talked about yet, but we should, is that building up that emergency fund. And that, especially if you've never truly had savings before, you've never thought about pay yourself first before, you know, if you're just getting started with a paycheck and learning to manage your money, trying to even save $500 feels daunting. But if you can just go about your day to day and have that extra $30 a month over, I mean, that can build up your emergency fund really fast just by doing your every day. But that does lead me to the next question I wanted to ask you about, which is emergency funds and kind of the importance of those in building up that first paycheck, kind of building up that really safety financial cushion for yourself as you're just getting established and learning how to manage money.
Yeah.
What is a good emergency fund, and what are some other ways people can go about doing that? I mean, outside of some of the things that we've already talked about.
Right. I mean, obviously the automatic transfers, I have it straight from my direct deposit, and then I don't see it. It doesn't feel like like I'm giving away so much when I'm not even seeing those funds. I know what needs to be in the checking account. I know what needs to be paying my bills. And another thing that I do, it sounds so silly, but I hide my savings account. So it's actually something you can do right in the app.
I do that too.
I don't want to know the number. I do check on it every once in a while, and I think in the start is the hardest time to see it, when you're $10 and you're up to 100, and then you dip in and you're back down to 50, and you're like, God, this is not where I want it to be. But after hiding it for a couple of months, it's a lot easier to look at that number and see, I've really done something. This is making a difference. When we talk about an emergency fund, the first goal is to have a month's worth of expenses set aside. We do remember that that's not your streaming services.
Right.
It's your necessities, the groceries, your rent, or your mortgage payment, right? The things that you absolutely couldn't go without. You're not going to be buying a coffee when you're dipping into your emergency fund to pay bills. Once you're up to a month, though, I think the goal for me has always been 6 months. It's a big number. That is a harder thing to do. It's a harder thing to leave there. But when you're getting up there, when you're not seeing it, when you're not touching it, it's automatically happening. It makes it a ton easier.
Yes.
I did want to go back and talk about something that you had brought up. When we're talking about automatically transferring and looking at having some of those automatic payments happen, loan payments, I do all of mine bi-weekly because it automatically happens. I just take my payment, divide it in half. I get paid bi-weekly. And so every 2 weeks a payment gets made to my loans, and it pays it off faster. And I'm paying less interest, which is amazing. And I don't even have to think about it. It's almost less work because it comes out of every paycheck.
Yeah. That's a really great point. I think doing that bi-weekly, to your point, it does kind of add that one additional payment into the, because you get paid, 52 weeks divided to 28, all that stuff. But that brings me to another question I wanted to talk about before we wrap up today, and that is, what advice do you have for somebody who truly doesn't feel like they have the money left to save? Because that pay yourself first is so important, and we started talking about, 20% is the goal. But if you truly are kind of like just in that, income range where that's just not feasible at this moment in time, what's some tips, some advice, some motivation somebody could have to even just start making those little steps towards saving more? I grew up on, like I said, on a really strict budget. It is a challenge, and I understand that. I am not trying to tell somebody that they have to live on the street to save 20% of their income, right? But I think looking at our budgets and being really strict with ourselves is important. We have a budget worksheet here. It's available online. You can also work with somebody. You can set up an appointment. That's what I did. We printed off some of my checking account statements, and we took highlighters, and you don't realize how much you're spending. We talked about this last time. You'd be amazed where your money is going. And if it's not that, not everybody's going to Quick Trip every day, but if it's that you're still not seeing enough money to start saving, we maybe need to revisit
your rental obligation. That's a huge one.
Yeah.
In the area, I know a lot of people have roommates. Maybe that's where we need to be to get comfortable. I know those are hard choices to make, but those hard choices are going to put us into a more comfortable scenario where, you know, you probably don't need to be in a bigger, nicer apartment if when your car breaks down, you can't get it fixed.
Yeah.
So having the ability to save is going to lead you into a place where you can be more stable in the long run.
Yeah.
And that does take sacrifices. Start with as much as you can right away. You're probably not going to be able to make these huge changes day one.
Nor should you try to make huge changes. It should be
Yeah.
incremental, manageable changes to build the habit to get to where you want. Because if you
Yes.
do try to make those huge life-changing changes, you're going to fail.
Yeah.
That's a big commitment. So
I have that
little
conversation
wins.
with people all the time. If you think you need to, you know, cut back on everything, my husband and I did the Dave Ramsey thing. It's hard. It's very hard. You do have to give yourself a reward for some of these things.
Yes.
And for some people, like now that I've been doing it for a long time, seeing what is in the savings account, a huge reward. We're buying a house with First Alliance.
Fantastic.
So, but we were only able to do that by really being strict with ourselves and cutting back in ways. We both got second jobs for a little bit and were able to put all of that money into our savings. And it gave us the cushion and gave us that starting off point.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's really great advice that sometimes you do have to sacrifice in the short term to get to where you want to be long term. And some of those short term sacrifices, you just have to remember they're short term. Yeah. They're not intended to, the rest of your life is not going to feel this restricted from a budgetary standpoint, from a time standpoint. Those putting in that effort up front for that long term payoff really is beneficial. And we are out of time. I feel like we could just I feel like you and I could just sit here and talk all day, Sirena.
We could do three more right now, right?
Yeah, but thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate all of your insight and your comments and your tips and advice for our listeners. So thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us today. This has been Good Money Moves. Make sure you visit firstalliancecu.com where you can learn more about making good money moves for yourself. And until next time, stay financially empowered.